Good afternoon, everybody. So many cases, so little time. Yeah, it is third time in one day. Yeah, Jackie, it is. It absolutely is. Anyhow, talking about Karen Read today. Karen Read from Massachusetts. So I've been following this case for a while now, but I've only done one live stream, one video, and one short on it. But yeah, I've been watching all the hearings and I just haven't been commenting on it. But the trial is now upon us. So we're currently on day 2 of jury selection. I think it's going to take them a while to get an impartial jury. They had a pool of about 80 something potential jurors yesterday, and they managed to seat 4 jurors. So they've got another 80 today, and obviously, you know, they're not showing the proceedings. Sometimes they will show the proceedings, but you don't get to see very much. You get to see just the judge. But the judge in this case, she's kind of questioning jurors in sidebars and stuff, so it's not being televised. So it could be a while. So what I thought I'd do is do basically a crash course, like everything you need to know about the case, like condensed into one live stream. Thought I'd do that because I don't know how many of my viewers have been following the case. Because I haven't done very much coverage of it, I can't really gauge it, honestly. I don't really know. Do I think she's innocent? Yes, 100%. And I'll give you my opinion as to why as we go through this. So, yeah, like I said, I can't really gauge how many people are really kind of up to speed with this case. Like I can have a rough estimate of how many of my viewers are still interested in someone else, for example, or how many people are interested in Sebastian Rogers, or how many people are following the Delphi case, based on my viewership, but also based on the amount of comments that I get and the type of comments that I get. So if I cover a case enough, I get to know my viewership of that particular case. But I can't gauge it with this case. So what I'm going to do is just go through what we know, the basics. We're going to go through the basics first. And the New York, is it the New York Times, the New York Post? New York Post has done a reasonably good write-up of everything to know about the Karen Read murder case ahead of the trial. So they wrote this a couple of days ago. But we're also going to go through the defense's side of the argument, because that's, you see, the problem is there's been so much controversy in this case. So although I can't gauge my viewership on how many are interested, and if you're interested, how you're likely to side, which side you believe. But notwithstanding my personal, viewership, the case is very controversial. So, people are protesting outside of the court right now. They've even set up, is it 200 yard? Is it 200 yards or 200 feet? I can't remember. But there's basically they've cordoned off the courtroom, and protesters are not allowed to go more than, I think it's 200 feet, because 200 yards is a long way. 200 feet. And yeah, it's crazy. But there's a lot of people who believe she's innocent. Absolutely believe she's innocent, and for very good reason. And they're very angry about it, in my opinion, for very good reason. But there's the opposite side who are just as vocal, who believe she's guilty. And I don't honestly think that people who have just followed what the mainstream media have said and what certain, shall we say, high profile YouTube, not YouTube, Twitter persons have been saying about it. So I believe she's innocent, and I'll go through and tell you why. But I am gonna, I'm gonna give you a good overall viewpoint of the case. So we're gonna do just a read through this article because it gives us a good timeline. Yes, he was a cop. Yes, gives us a good timeline, gives us a good overview, and I'm going to play you a little bit from the court hearing last week because that sets out where the defense is at. That it's a lot like the Delphi case in that the defense is putting forward a third party guilt defense. Because if you know your law, even the basics of the law, honestly, you will know that it's the prosecution who has the burden of proof. The prosecution is bringing this person to trial, so it's their burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to the 12 members of a jury, just the same in my country, 12 members of a jury, burden of proof is on the prosecution. And the defense doesn't even have to do anything. They don't have to present any witnesses. They don't even have to cross-examine. They don't even have to do anything. If they said, we're just going to sit here and let the prosecution chat, they don't have to do anything. It's not their burden. They don't have to prove that their defendant is innocent. It's the prosecution's burden to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But there is obviously the option to put, if a defense team and a defendant feels strongly enough that there's evidence that other persons actually committed the crime, they are within the rights to offer up a third party guilt defense. So it's very much like the Delphi case in that regard, that in this case, Karen's defense team are putting forward a third party guilt defense, and they've got a very well developed defense. And let's see how it proceeds. The judge just said she'll allow it. She'll allow the third party guilt defense. They're not allowed to talk about it in opening statements. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes once the trial starts. But in the hearing last week, the defense team basically laid out the motive. Because we've always been, well, I certainly have, always been a little bit, well, what's really the motive? Why would they have killed him, like these third persons who I'm going to talk about? Why would they have killed him? Was it just like a scrap that went wrong? But no, there's a motive. There's a motive. All right. So let's start with the basics, though, first of all. Oh, yeah, and there was a massive document drop. There's about 80 pages of documents that were released about 6 days ago, 5 or 6 days ago. The judge unsealed them. And I'm not going to read you through 80 pages, but I am going to kind of just cover the absolute lies that the prosecutors brought to the grand jury. And this is now under federal investigation. It has been for a while. And one of the guys that the defense are claiming is one of the true culprits has taken a federal proffer. So things are going to get very, very interesting, regardless of what happens in this trial, I think. But this is from the New York Post, and this is a couple of days old now. Everything to know about the Karen Read murder case gripping Massachusetts. So the location of this place is Canton in Massachusetts. So it's quite near Boston. And I'm just going to get my map up in the background so I can just show the place. Fairview Road, Canton, Massachusetts. Here we go. All right. Just got that up in the background. Just in case we want to go to the map. Was it an intoxicated girlfriend or the crooked cops? Because Boston cop John O'Keefe was found dead. And Karen Read, his girlfriend, has been charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter. She was originally charged with manslaughter, but it was upgraded to second-degree murder. Or was it a small conglomeration of people connected to the house party, so the house where John O'Keefe was found in the early hours of the 29th of January 2022 on their front lawn, the front lawn of 34 Fairview Road in Canton in Massachusetts. Controversial murder trial involving the mysterious death of a Boston police officer starts Tuesday in Norfolk, Massachusetts Superior Court, despite an ongoing FBI investigation into how local authorities handled the case. Karen Read, 44-year-old financial analyst and college professor, is facing second-degree murder charges in the death of her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. So this is Karen. She has been out on bail. And this is John. So she's not been in a maximum security prison like Richard Allen has. So even though the trial is very much like Delphi, in that the defence are putting forward a third-party guilt defence, the way that the two defendants have been treated pre-trial is very different. Karen has been out on bail. Richard Allen, as we know, if you've been following the Delphi case, has been in a maximum security prison. Right. So John's body was found lying in the snow in a house, outside a house in suburban Canton, 14 miles south of Boston on January 29, 2022. So prosecutors have claimed that it was Karen who angrily ran him over and left him to die as a snowstorm descended onto Canton. They were having some relationship problems, and that seems to be how the prosecutors managed to persuade a grand jury to indict her for murder. They just went through a bunch of witnesses who could speak to Karen's bad character. Okay. But we'll get to that. So the setting is this. All right. So January 28th, John and Karen and a bunch of cops and their families were out drinking, and just after kind of midnight, they left the bar and went back to 34 Fairview Road in Canton. And that is the home of Brian Albert and his wife. And we'll hear a lot about the Alberts as we go through this. The Alberts think they own Canton. They think they're big shots in the area. Okay. Yeah. All right. They think that they've got all the relevant authorities in their pocket. And so far, it appears that might be what actually happened. I don't know. So, prosecutors allege that she intentionally backed a Lexus SUV into John O'Keefe in a rage while she was doing a 3-point turn. So she killed him doing a 3-point turn by expertly hitting him so that he fell backwards, smashed his skull open in numerous places, got dog bites all down one arm. And oh yes, 100%. I'll bet my house there are dog bites. I'm not the 100% dog bites. So a Lexus SUV backs into him at a slow speed, right? Because how fast can you go doing a 3-point turn? Seriously. All right. Knocks him over into some grass. So nothing that he could bang his head on. It's the snow on the ground. And yeah, leaves him to die. All right, okay. But she's got a brilliant legal team. So the lead attorney is Alan Jackson, who represented Kevin Spacey. I don't even know who that is, an actor, I think. But yeah, they are really good. So if I'm ever accused of a crime in Massachusetts, I want these guys. So just like I've told you that if I'm ever accused of a crime in Indiana, I want Rosie and Baldwin. Well, I want these guys if I'm ever in Massachusetts and I'm accused of a crime. So the defense is that it's the people at this party who actually murdered John O'Keefe, left him out in the snow, like didn't know what to do with him, left him out in the snow, and engineered a plot to frame Karen. Okay. So very divided. There's been a local blogger known as Turtle Boy, who I'm not going to talk about. He's divisive in his own right. So what is most interesting, the most interesting development to date is this federal investigation. The feds are not happy. The feds have come in and they are investigating each and every officer who's been involved in this investigation. And it's been going on a while now, but obviously federal investigations, we don't get to know about them. There's been federal grand jury, and Brian Higgins, who is one of Brian Albert's friends, he's taken a proffer. Okay. All right. Never seen anything like this before. A source close to the Read case told the Post about the Fed's shadow investigation. It's pretty crazy, and yet the Norfolk DA is going ahead with the trial, and no one's stopping it. To me, the prosecutors are on a suicide mission. Well, the prosecutor, Lally, Mr. Lally, who I'll call Do Lally from now on, he's he's going ahead. And the judge, Bev Canoni or Cannon or whatever, yeah, she's very much on the prosecutorial side. However, she's been fairer than Judge Gull. Like she hasn't, not yet anyway. She's respected the defense. She's respected the job they do, and she hasn't disqualified them for some nonsense or other. But she knows that the feds are all over this case. So, she's on her best behavior. All right. So, as we said, we're out drinking. And around midnight, so let's get this relationship right. Brian Albert, whose house it is, his wife's sister is Jennifer McCabe. And she is the one who allegedly invited Karen and John, even though neither John nor Karen knew these people very well. But Jennifer allegedly invited them back for this house party. And Brian Albert, you know, is distinguished character. Retired Boston Police Fugitive Unit commander, Gulf War veteran, appeared on the reality show Boston's Finest. So he thinks he's somewhat of a big shot. And he's got like, there's 3 brothers, I think. There's Chris, Tim, and Kevin. I think they're all Brian's brothers. And they're all in some way related to this case. Now, Chris Albert has a son called Colin Albert, who's a young man. And Colin Albert and John O'Keefe, so when Colin was about like 16, he lived near John, Colin Albert. This is Chris Albert's son. So Brian Albert's nephew lived near John. And John and Colin got into, you know, a war of words on more than one occasion. And then recently, recently before he was murdered, Karen and John went on vacation. They went to Aruba. And while they were away, Colin Albert was on John O'Keefe's property, like, you know, drinking beers on his, you know, in his yard and stuff, to basically take pictures to wind him up. So there was a fractious relationship between Colin Albert and John O'Keefe, going back to, you know, Colin Albert being a teenager. He's a little bit older now, but there's still this kind of fractiousness, but a silly kind of fractiousness, like annoying rather than murderous. So that's why, until the hearing last week, I thought, well, okay, I believe Karen's innocent. However, what motive would there have been for these guys, these cops, to kill John O'Keefe? What would the motive be? Did they just get into an argument and he fell down the basement stairs and they panicked? Or what? Because the only thing I'd heard about was this disagreement, this ongoing kind of feud that wasn't really that serious between Colin Albert and John O'Keefe. I thought, surely they're not going to murder somebody just because, you know, John O'Keefe doesn't like Colin. You know, it's a bit odd, but stranger things have happened, haven't they? Anyway, so Jennifer McCabe told them to park in the drive. So I'll just show you the house quickly. So she's told them to park in the driveway. All right. Okay, so this is the house. 34 Fairview Road. And she told them, because, you know, it's plenty of room for several cars, she told them to park in the driveway. However, Karen was driving. Karen didn't park in the driveway. She pulled along here and she parked near this post, like near the mailbox. Mailbox is that the mailbox there? Yeah, and this pole, flagpole. So she pulled in somewhere along here. Now, there was someone else also parked on the road who saw Karen on her own in her car and didn't see a dead body. Didn't see John and didn't see a dead body. Parked right behind Karen. Karen was parked here. And the other person parked here, right behind Karen. If there was a dead body lying here near this pole, surely the person directly behind Karen would have seen because if that person could see Karen in the car, I'm quite sure that person had eyes that could have made out someone lying in the snow, like dying or whatever. All right. So, okay, that's the house. All right, back to this. So she pulled in and she went home, or back to John's. Like, apparently they'd had a little tiff, whatever. And about 12:30 a.m., she went back to John's. So reportedly, there's about a dozen people who've gone back to the house for this party. We think about a dozen. It could be more, because originally the numbers was, it was 6. It was just 6 people. But now we're up to a dozen. So we don't really know how many people were there. All right. So she went home about 3 miles to John's house, and there is CCTV of her leaving. John had a camera, which very strangely, Officer Proctor, the lead investigator, well, he took John's phone and he rifled through it. Anyhow, that's by the by. But there's this CCTV that's been released of Karen leaving that house and backing into John's car and like connecting to John's car, because she was in a blind panic. Why? Well, she woke up around 4:30 a.m. panicking that John hadn't come home. And she tried calling him, couldn't get through to him. So then she phoned Jennifer McCabe, the woman who had invited her to the party, who'd invited her and John to the party. And Jennifer McCabe said that she hadn't seen him. You know, I invited you. I saw you outside. However, neither of you came in. So she's denying to have ever seen John. Okay. All right. So Karen starts panicking, starts ringing around. So there's this woman called Carrie Roberts, who's an old friend of John. Anyhow, eventually they started riding round. So Jennifer McCabe, Carrie Roberts, and Karen. And they basically retrace the steps, you know, from John's to 34 Fairview Road. Last place that Karen saw John. Obvious to go there, even though Jennifer said he'd never gone in. She hadn't seen either of them. So when they finally got there, they saw John lying out there in the cold. And a snowstorm was just beginning, you know, when this horrible event was kicking off. And he was almost buried in snow. So they tried CPR and all the things, but he was dead. He was pronounced dead on arrival at hospital. Okay, so that's the situation. She was her blood alcohol was 0.07, between 0.07 and 0.8. So 0.8 is the legal limit. But this obviously several hours later. You know, she's gone home, she's gone to sleep, she's like slept for maybe 3 or 4 hours, and it's the following morning. So they had to do like a calculation to extrapolate. I don't think it was completely covered over in snow, but it was snowing. There was a covering of snow. More snow fell, which becomes very relevant when we hear about the tail light, but we'll get there. Right. So they estimated that her blood alcohol was it would have been between 0.13 and 0.29, so well over the limit. So that was just a calculation, though, based on how quickly alcohol gets out your system and how many hours had passed. Right, it's just a rough estimate. So The cops knew she was over the limit when she was driving. And here we got this dead guy. And we've got Karen, who's freaked out, doesn't know what on earth happened, questioned, like she was heard saying, did I hit him? So she didn't know if she'd hit him. And there's a broken tail light. Now, when you see the CCTV of her leaving, like panicked, leaving to go and look for John, she hits John's car. So that must be how she broke her tail light. Thank you, Purple AJ, for the $50. That's extremely generous of you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah, she got to pay for her defense. Yeah, spent all her savings. Her parents have spent all the savings. They've been fundraising. So, yeah. So this is what the defense are claiming, that she broke that tail light when she backed into John's car. It was only a little bump. And it's really strange that the CCTV going to John's house that would have caught Karen on camera, none of that was working that night. I don't know why, but there's a camera that the defense are alleging would have caught Karen's car and would have been able to, prove that tail light was intact on leaving Brian Albert's house and going to John's house. Just the direction and where that camera is, it would have caught Karen's car and you'd be able to see that the tail light was intact. But just a complete coincidence, that camera just wasn't working that night. All right. Okay. It wasn't working that night. So the cops put all these things together. We've got a woman who's panicking. She's over the limit, or at least she would have been over the limit. She doesn't know what on earth happened. Let's arrest her. So they arrested her for manslaughter. But then they upgraded the charges a little later. It's kind of I can't remember when they upgraded the charges, but they upgraded the charges to second-degree murder. So she's arrested on February 2nd. All right. 4 months later, the charges were elevated to murder. This was after a grand jury, which we'll talk about shortly. All right. Okay. Now, it's not her supporters that are believing this. Right? Oh, yeah, there are people. There's lots of people who've been investigating this, like, bloggers and podcasters and stuff have been investigating this. But I'm not talking about what they're saying. I'm talking about what the defense is saying and the evidence that the defense have. I am going off that, not off what anybody on social media is saying. But it doesn't have to be. Like, people who think that the defense are just trying to pull a fast one and that Karen is guilty are poo-pooing this idea that it's actually the people at the party, some of them, or even all of them, are aware that John died for whatever reason at that party. Or someone deleted the footage from the camera. Yeah, but whatever. I didn't say that. You said that. It just wasn't working that night. Right. Okay, well, it doesn't actually have to be a massive conspiracy that all the police in Canton Police Department and all of the state police and everyone at the DA's office is in on it. That's not how these kind of cover-ups work. You only need a small number of people to be on the inside who can then influence other people. You don't have to have a massive conspiracy that everybody involved in law enforcement in the entirety of Massachusetts is in on this. No. It's a small number of cops, because what we know is, right, Brian Albert, very well respected in his local area as this, Gulf War veteran. He's been on this fugitive task force as a commander. He's got respect amongst local cops. And one of the family friends is someone called Trooper Proctor. Who's Proctor? Well, Proctor is the lead investigator on the case. Unfortunately for Proctor, he's now being investigated by the feds because he omitted to tell anyone that he was a very close friend of the Alberts. In fact, so close were the Proctors and the Alberts was Brian Albert's mother said that the Proctors were like her second family. They were that close. And it was Proctor who did all the, initial investigations, questioning and stuff. And isn't it interesting that, all of this kerfuffle that was going on, they find this dead body of John O'Keefe on the lawn of 34 Fairview Road, home of Brian Albert, who's this, a fugitive commander, Gulf War veteran. What did he do? What did he do when the body was discovered? And, the first responders arrived, paramedics arrived, they were trying to, give him CPR. What did Brian Albert do? What did he do? Nothing. Didn't even come out of his house. Claimed he was asleep, except he wasn't. Because after a lot of fighting and wrangling, the defence has now been able to get the phone records of the Alberts, Jennifer McCabe, and they were talking to each other. Oh dear. So Brian Albert claiming to be asleep is utter nonsense because they knew full well what was going on outside. How can you sleep through like an ambulance and all the palaver going on? Yeah, he got amnesia. Yeah, okay. All right. So the cops knitted this together like a tight cap, said one local resident who is too fearful of repercussions to be publicly identified. That poor son of a bitch was beaten to a pulp. He wasn't hit by a car. This is a bad, bad crime scene, and people trying to pin it on Karen are evil. You see, the other thing is, all right, no investigations of inside the house were done. Not one. Not one cop investigated the inside of that house. Trooper Proctor went to, take statements off Brian Albert and Nicole, I think her name is his wife. And yeah, took statements and they just said, nothing to see here. We didn't see him. So even though this dead body is found with serious injuries on his front lawn, they don't even bother to go and check anything to do with the house. And, well, shortly after this man died of numerous fractures to his skull and dog bites all down one arm. I'll show you the dog bites in a minute. The dog bites are interesting. 100% dog bites, by the way. I know dogs. I know what bites look like. Yeah, well, and it's strange that they got rid of that dog, German Shepherd, name of Chloe, 7-year-old German Shepherd. They got rid of her in the months after this murder, got rid of her. They don't know where she is. Oh, we sold her out of state somewhere. Don't know where she is. Because, ideally they'd like to get that dog's DNA to test it against any DNA found on his body. Well, actually, DNA testing of his body didn't reveal any dog DNA in these bites. So people are saying, well, they can't be dog bites if there's no dog DNA. Well, what do you do when you're trying to cover something up? You wipe out the cuts, don't you? You wipe out the cuts with alcohol. Yeah, Chloe had a bad history. She did. And the story that they gave for finally getting rid of Chloe was that she had a fight with a neighbour's dog. And when they were separating these two fighting dogs, a neighbour got bit and they kicked off. Therefore, they had to rehome Chloe to somewhere that, they didn't know where. Didn't know where. She's just been rehomed. They didn't know where. All right, cool. The other thing is that they had their entire basement floor taken up and redone. Why? Well, apparently they had a leak down there in the basement. Okay, well, that's that was expensive. Hopefully it was covered on the home insurance. But yeah, apparently there was this big leak in the basement and they had to redo their entire floor of the basement. Okay, cool. Third thing, they sold this house. They completely redid the basement and then put the house up for sale. A blood leak. Yes. Yes, I think so. But the cops won't know that, will they? Because they never bothered to even test anything. Nothing. Not even a cursory looking around with one of those pens that they have. You know, those little lights that show up stains that you can't see with the naked eye. No. Okay. All right, there's that. But there's more. So, Albert's family been in the Canton for generations. Locals say the clan has enormous influence, connections in town, as well as Norfolk County and with the Boston Police Department. One of Albert's brothers is a town selectman. What's a selectman? I don't know. The other is a Canton police sergeant. So I've counted 3 brothers, like 2 Brian. So we've got Brian, Tim, Chris, who is Colin's dad, and then there's a Kevin. I think it's Kevin that's the Canton police sergeant, but I might be wrong. There might be more siblings, I don't know, but those are the 4 that I've counted, including Brian. A lead detective for the state police, officially investigating the case, Michael Proctor, reportedly a close friend of the Albert family. I am 1000% sure that Karen is innocent. And what we have here is a botched crime scene investigation. No, it's not botched. It's completely non-existent. When you botch a crime scene, you do it badly. You make mistakes. You can't botch a crime scene that you didn't even investigate. Okay. All right. This is someone from called Sean McDonough, who is a 35-year-old veteran of law enforcement who spent 28 years with the DEA and 7 years as a Washington, D.C. area cop and crime scene investigator. That's the district attorney, Michael Morrissey, who is a complete slime ball, allegedly. The Massachusetts State Police planted evidence to frame Karen, there's no doubt in my mind, McDonough opined. You see, do you know what they found? Right, a few days after, they took his body away. And then the police chief, whose name begins with B. But anyway, the police chief just happened to be driving past 34 Fairview Road, just happened to be driving past and caught a glimpse of a piece of red plastic in the snow. Bear in mind, it had snowed more since John had been positioned there and taken away. But no, this eagle-eyed cop noticed this minute piece of red plastic in the snow, and also some bits of glass from a cocktail glass. So they've set it up that John got out of Karen's car holding a cocktail glass, and maybe it's the cocktail glass that caused the cut in his arm. Although no, these are not glass cuts. However, glass cuts are not teeth marks. I'll show you. Show you in a minute. Don't rush me. I'm in a minute. Be a minute. That's all. We're nearly there. Okay. Now, what else is there? Yeah. So he found this. Bit of plastic that is consistent with Karen's damage, the small bit of damage to her tail light. So this plastic comes from Karen's tail light. Now, isn't it interesting that the night that her car was impounded and taken, away for processing, the CCTV at the car processing place, that mysteriously wasn't working for about 45 minutes or so. Just the time that these cops were there with Karen's car. And the rationale as to why, this all came out of the hearing last week, the rationale as to why this CCTV wasn't on when Karen's car arrived there and these cops were there, doing whatever, was that it was motion activated. Oh, well, it was motion activated, so therefore it wasn't on. Well, okay, driving a car in, surely that would activate the camera, and then the moving around the car to process that car, that's also activity, isn't it? Yeah, and then mysteriously, when they leave, it mysteriously turns back on. I don't know what to tell you. All of this missing video. Delphi anyone? Oh dear. Oh, there's so much. If you're brand new to this case, honestly, it's been nuts. Absolutely nuts. All right. Voluminous and detailed analysis of that wintry early morning tragedies filled Twitter, YouTube, and individual blogs as the amateur and professional sleuths focus on forensic details. Yeah, I'm not. Melanie Little, actually, she's got quite a good. I've watched a few of her videos. She's gone through some of the court documents. She's got a good handle on the case. If you want just to sit and listen to having court documents read to you, then Melanie Little's channel. So yeah, she's apparently done 50 hours of YouTube videos, but I don't know. She says it was totally mishandled. There's no way Karen hit him with her car, but the crux of it is that the Albert family has been in Canton for generations. Most of the witnesses in the case are not only related, but are long-time locals. Karen's not. She's the outsider. So if they wanted to frame someone, then she's a good person to frame. I think what they did, because the snowplow came by at something past 2, and the snowplow guy, you'd think he would be somebody that would have maybe spoken at the grand jury. No, they didn't even bother interviewing the snowplow guy for 18 months. So the snowplow came by about 2 o'clock, something like that. And he said that there was nobody out there. There was no dead body there. He would have known. He went past with his snowplow, with his snow machine. At something past 2, there was no dead body there. All right. I think what the Alberts did, originally, the plan wasn't to frame Karen. I think they put him out there in the snow so that they could argue, oh, well, he stumbled away like drunk, and the snowplow hit him. And maybe the snowplow guy didn't even know he'd hit him or something like that. I think that's what they did. They saw the snowplow and thought, I know what, we'll put his body out there and we can pretend he was hit by a snowplow. We can just deny. And then when Karen turns up, freaking out, panicking, you know, complete nervous wreck and makes a potentially incriminating statement like, did I hit him? And then they notice that she's got a cracked tail light because she, you know, hit John's car when she was leaving. They thought, I know what, we can fit her up. She'll be the fall guy. I think that's what happened. I don't think originally the plan was to frame Karen. I think in the hours that followed, I think that's when the plan was hitched. That's just my opinion, though, and it might be completely wrong. It's just what I feel might have happened. So prosecutors say that both Read and O'Keefe have been drinking a lot when they left the Waterfall bar, so we know all that. Okay. Yeah, broken tail light. So yeah, it was Proctor who noticed that local tail light. So I think it was then. I think it was like a few hours after, you know, they got together and thought, I know what, we'll frame Karen for it. But yeah. Okay. It's not him. It wasn't Proctor that found the pieces. It was the police chief. I'm positive it was. And it was days after. I think when they took the truck, the SUV into the impound lot to get processed, I think they took a piece of tail light and they positioned it at the spot where they found his body and some broken glass to explain the scratches. I think they put broken glass there. Now, I've not seen the autopsy report. That some of the autopsy photos have been released. I mean, it's unusual that they release photos. I mean, they've not released anything gruesome, but they've released a picture of his arm. And I'll show you a picture in a moment. Because it appears, I can't find it anywhere. If you've got a copy of his autopsy report, can you let me know? Because I want the autopsy report, because I want to do a whole video going through how this was a fight or a murder rather than someone being run over. Because the injuries that we've heard, this cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. All right. There was no major injuries to his body. Now, this is an SUV. So if you got run over by an SUV, the injuries would be to your torso, wouldn't it? Like an SUV, they're not like massively tall, are they? So if you were hit from behind, like if a SUV at a very slow speed, so you'd probably just be able to step out the way. But if you were too slow and it got you, the injuries would be to your torso, not to your head. I mean, you might have an head injury if you fell and bang your head, but falling onto grass, this was a lawn. This is a lawn. You're falling onto grass, right? So the major injuries would be to your torso, not to your head. And there's nothing on a SUV at all that would account for these bite marks on his arm. So I think they had to engineer a situation to explain these cuts. And that's why they dropped some broken glass with the tail light. That's just what I think. That's just what I think. All right. So do I want to read any more of this? This is all about the supporters. Okay. All right. So that's about the motion dismissed. All right. Okay. So let's fast forward. So that's just an overview. Let's fast forward now to the most recent events. But before we do that, here's one I prepared earlier. So like I said at the beginning, I've only done one live stream, one video, which is this nearly 14-minute video, and then a YouTube short. That's all I've done on this case. But this in itself, This in itself is enough to convince me that John O'Keefe was not run over. Unless that SUV had teeth that resembled dog's teeth. Because despite what all of these nonsense spreaders have been saying, mentioning no names, Jennifer Coffendaffer, and people who said, well, the medical examiner would know more than, oh, people who just happen to have a dog. No. Why does the glass matter? The glass matters because of these cuts. They needed to be able to explain these cuts. Zombie attack. Yeah. They need to explain these cuts. So I made a whole video, the case of John O'Keefe and Karen Read. John O'Keefe, let's talk about dog bites. All right, so the live stream was the case of John O'Keefe and Karen Read, and the video that I'm quoting from here is over on Michelle Walks. If you want to go and watch it, this channel, it's on this channel. So this is an autopsy photo, and these are the bites to his right arm. So these are dog bites. Maybe the dog was trying to get him out of the snow. No. The dog is a German Shepherd who's got a bite history. German Shepherds, beautiful dogs, very loyal. And if a fight kicks off, a German Shepherd would jump in to protect her people. So what I think is there was a fight, and I think Chloe made numerous grabs at his arm with her jaws. Because those are a dog's canines. Because a dog, unless it's trained to bite and hold, the natural movement of a dog when it bites is to grab and tear. Because if you think about what dogs do, right, why they bite, they don't routinely bite each other. They very rarely bite each other. Dogs do a lot of appeasement activities. You know, they don't want to fight, dogs generally. They don't want to fight each other, and they don't want to fight humans generally. Right? Generally speaking, like there's millions and millions of dogs in the world, and you get, you know, a very small number of them actually bite to a point where they kill you. So medical examiners, pathologists don't often see dog-related deaths. It's like a handful a year. That's all. So the dog's natural kind of movement when they bite is they lunge and they grab and they tear. Because if you think about a dog taking down like a prey, so a dog pack attacking a deer, they jump, they lunge, and they tear until they can get that, you know, deer down, and then they all launch on for like a feeding frenzy. Police dogs, protection dogs, are actually trained to grab and hold on. So German Shepherd, it's not their natural. So any shepherding breeds, the German Shepherds, Swiss Shepherds, Dutch Shepherds, Belgian Shepherds, all of those breeds, they're herding dogs. They were bred to protect a flock of sheep or a flock of whatever. So they're very loyal. Like they look after their own. Once they claim you, that's it. You're theirs, and they don't want anyone else involved. So that's why they make great protection dogs, and they're very intelligent, and they've got great stamina. So, you know, that's why police services worldwide use German Shepherds, Belgian Shepherds particularly. But it's not their natural reaction to hold on. They have to be trained to do that. Now, there are some dog breeds who will do that regardless, and those are the terriers, because terriers have been bred to kill. German shepherds, Belgian shepherds have not been bred to kill. They've been bred to protect. That's why, yes, you get a lot of bites that come from German shepherds, Belgian shepherds. Collies even are the same. But you get very, very few deaths because they don't want to hurt you. They don't. They want to protect their own. They want you away. They want you gone. So the bite is a nip. I mean, yes, it will hurt, but it's a nip and it tears. And then they get off and they'll go again. They don't want to hurt you. Any of the herding breeds, they don't want to hurt you. They're protecting their own. They're protecting their pack. They're protecting their flock. And I think that's what Chloe was doing, because she wasn't a trained police dog. So you've got Brian Albert, who's this, ex-fugitive commander, and you automatically assume when he's got a German Shepherd, therefore she must be a trained police dog. No, she wasn't. She was just a pet. She was a pet dog. So she wasn't trained in protection work. So she wasn't trained to hold on, and that's it's holding on no matter what, even if you're getting beaten down, even if you're the criminal's hitting you over the head, you're going to hold on until you're told to release. That's not Chloe. Now, terriers that's what they're bred for. They're bred to kill, like rats, rabbits, etc. That's why they bred the terriers into the bull breeds to create pit bulls and bull terriers, staffies, because you've got the power of a bull breed with the killer instinct of a terrier. Jack Russells bite more than German shepherds. Okay. Recently, I did a members live over on Michelle After Dark about dangerous dogs. But back to this. So, those are the upper canines. Those are upper canines. This one's interesting. This is... So you've got the 3. So that could be... Those are canines, I think, but she's moved position. This one down here, though, that's a nip. That's a nip. You've got the upper teeth, and then here you've got bruising. So she's almost connected with her lower teeth. There. That's a nip. Canines. Puncture wound there. Potential puncture wound there. They must have spent hours. So I thought that these originally, these ones were scratches. And they could well be scratches. They could well be scratches. But I think these are canines. Those are canines. You can actually see where it's punctured. It's punctured there. It's punctured there. It's punctured there. It's punctured there. Where she's connected, let go briefly, connected again, and then torn the skin. And if you think about how the armies, where they are on the arm, John would have been holding his right arm up. So I bet you any money he's right-handed. He's holding his arm up to protect himself. And she's getting him on the outside of his arm, because that's obviously the bit that's exposed. So there you go, 100%. Therefore, if you can prove these are dog bites, which they are, then Karen Read is innocent. Slam dunk. Case closed, let's go home. But no. All right, newly unsealed Karen Read documents outline how defense says prosecutors deceived the grand jury. So these were unsealed a few days ago. 80 odd pages of it, but I'm just going to read you this short article. So over 100 pages. So it was only 80 pages. There must be more documents than I've seen then. Largely redacted. No, there was a lot that wasn't redacted. Relating to the Karen Read case, shedding light on issues defense attorneys have raised about the grand jury proceedings. So remember that the feds are investigating. The feds have had their own grand jury proceedings, but we will not learn. We will not learn about those because the feds are very secretive. So Karen Read charged with second-degree murder, as we know, January 29th, 2022. Norfolk Superior Court Judge Beverly Canoni agreed last Tuesday, to unseal some of the documents requested by the Boston Globe. Many of the pages released lay out what's behind the defense's argument that Read's indictment should have thrown out. Of course, the judge denied, right? They wrote a motion to dismiss. She denied that. And it's in that motion to dismiss document that you get all of the juicy details. So some really juicy details in that documentation, just like there were some juicy details in last week's hearing. I'm going to listen to some of that in a few minutes. So Read's attorneys say the grand jury that indicted her were misled by prosecutors with the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. All right. A majority of the witnesses who testified before the grand jury were not precipitant witnesses, so personal, that like they did not witness the murder. They weren't there shortly after the murder. They had literally nothing to do with the murder or the alleged murder, right? The alleged murder by Karen. Like we know John was murdered. Oh, incidentally, forgot to tell you about the autopsy. Cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head because he had numerous fractures to his skull. But what was his manner of death? What was his manner of death? So that's why he died. So cause of death is how you die. So blunt force trauma to the head is his cause of death. So he also had hypothermia, so he was still alive when he was dumped out there. Because you can't get hypothermia once you're dead. Well, no, you can't because you know heat in your body. Right, anyway, he might have been barely alive. Hopefully, he was barely alive, and he doesn't know anything about being dumped outside. But I don't know. We'll never know that, will we? But the manner of death is why he died. Undetermined. So the medical examiner didn't even say this was homicide, but how on earth would you get blunt force trauma to your head if you it's either murder or maybe you fell off a tall building or something, and landed on your head? Then I guess you'd call that, I don't even know you'd call that blunt force trauma. Anyhow, the majority of the witnesses who testified before the grand jury were not precipitant witnesses to any of the events in question, and were instead called for the purpose of testifying to remote and irrelevant bad character and propensity evidence prejudicing the jury against Miss Read, misleading the grand jury, confusing the issues and wasting time. This is what her attorney wrote. To be clear, not a single witness testified that they had observed Miss Read strike O'Keefe with her vehicle, injure him in any way, or otherwise drive erratically on the night in question. No one even saw her driving erratically. So she was over the limit. She was drinking, she was over the limit, but no one even witnessed her driving erratically. Even though there was someone parked right behind her when she was sitting there on her own in the vehicle. If she was on her own in the vehicle, according to the prosecution's theory of the case, John was dead or dying on the lawn. And this person who sat behind her can attest to seeing Karen on her own in the vehicle, but not to John lying feet away on the lawn. I don't know. We've got a circumstantial evidence case as to how he met his death, and so it'll be both the physical evidence and the experts will testify to as to what indicates that he was or was not hit by a vehicle. NBC 10 Boston legal analyst Michael Coyne said Wednesday. We'll also have, obviously, the examination of a lot of the cell phones. So we know there was a lot of secret calling. You know, they tried hard to keep the cell phone records of Jennifer McCabe and Albert and that away from the defence. But finally, they had to release them. And yeah, there was a lot of calling going on. The defence says Trooper Michael Proctor, who sources tell NBC 10 Boston, is under investigation by Massachusetts State Police. No, he's under investigation by the feds. Did not make clear to grand jurors that O'Keefe's manner of death was officially undetermined. So, yeah. And also something bizarre that they did is they got police officers to speak to the grand jury who weren't the police officers who were actually there. They got police officers to read other police officers' reports. Why is that? Well, one thing, that's hearsay. So, objection, hearsay, all day and all night. It's so that none of them would have to perjure themselves. They get someone else to read their report and answer questions so that they don't have to perjure themselves. All right. At the Commonwealth's direction, Trooper Proctor was instructed to read the cause of death determination from O'Keefe's death certificate into the record, namely blunt impact injuries of the head and hypothermia, suggesting that the cause of death was generally consistent with the Commonwealth's theory of the case. Read's attorney wrote. Intentionally withheld from the grand jury, however, is the fact that O'Keefe's death certificate also states that the manner of death could not be determined. And also, in my opinion, blunt impact injuries, like to the head, is not consistent, or at least it's more consistent with a fight, you know, being repeatedly punched or hit over the head with something, than being driven into by a slow-moving vehicle who's doing a three-point turn, where the main injuries are actually to the head, not to the torso. Delphi syndrome. Yeah, it is. It's Delphi syndrome. While prosecutors cite a precedence to the words homicide, suicide, and accident on a death certificate, while prosecutors cited precedent that the words homicide, suicide, or accident on a death certificate should be excluded in court to avoid prejudicing a jury, according to the defence, the opposite does not hold true. Notably missing from a list of words on a death certificate that need to be excluded from a criminal trial is a finding that the manner of death could not be determined, the defence wrote. This finding was exculpatory and yet was intentionally withheld from the grand jury. Okay, so this as well. Jennifer McCabe, Jennifer McCabe used her phone to search how long to die in the cold. So she asked Google how long it takes someone to die in the cold at 2:30 a.m. Now, apparently, you know, prosecutors have said she did that hours later and it's something to do with the, I don't know, the time or whatever, but no. I think it was a members video I did. I don't know whether it was a members video or I did it in the live. I can't remember. But they were arguing it's to do with the Google search, that she searched something at 2:30, and because she didn't close that window, then it gave that time. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The time that you open something is the time that you open. The time of the search is the time of the search, not the time that you open the window. No. All right. So they believe that this grand jury is just absolute nonsense. Obviously, the prosecutor said, no, we didn't withhold any exculpatory evidence. But yeah. Okay. Bring in Detective Sergeant Michael Lank, who also spoke at the grand jury. Well as Proctor, being a long-standing family friend of the Alberts, so is Lank, Michael Lank. Long-standing relationship with the Albert family. None of these relationships were disclosed to the grand jurors. Newly unsealed documents, the court released photos the defence shared with the media last year showing Proctor with members of the Albert family as far back as 2012. They also outline Read's attorney's allegation that prosecutors intentionally misled the grand jury by allowing another trooper, Yuri Bukinek. Oh, that's him. I'm sure that was him who found the tail light. I'm sure it was him who found the tail light. Anyway, it doesn't matter who found the tail light. One of them found this tail light piece, small piece, days afterwards, just happened to be driving by and found it in the snow that was freshly, I mean, it just doesn't work because freshly fallen snow would cover up the ground and cover up a tail light piece if it had been out there days. But no. Anyhow. Okay. So they allowed this guy, Birkeneck, to falsely insinuate to the grand jury that he and Trooper Proctor had never met Brian Albert's brother, Chris Albert, or Chris's wife, Julie, both of them, who testified they were at a restaurant and a bar with the group in the hours before O'Keefe's death. So again, Chris Albert is Colin Albert's dad, Colin Albert being the young man who has a long-standing kind of feud with John O'Keefe. All right, so there's all of these, they're just all in with each other. It's crazy. Crazy. In Lank's grand jury testimony, the defence argues he did not make his connection to the Albert family clear, or the fact that the Canton Police Department called in state police due to the conflict raised by Brian Albert's brother Kevin working for the department. Detective Sergeant Lank falsely implied to the grand jury that the Canton Police Department lost jurisdiction because the state police always responds to investigate homicides, and withheld the fact that the agency he works for, the Canton Police Department, was conflicted off the case. If Detective Sergeant Lank and Trooper Michael Proctor had been honest about their long-standing relationship with the Alberts, the grand jury would have been extraordinarily sceptical of the entire investigation. You don't say. I don't think it's just the relationships between them, though. It's the fact that there was absolutely no investigation, that there was no investigation of the house. There was clearly no real investigation of the crime scene if it took a few days to find this piece of red plastic. Should have stood out like a sore thumb against the whiteness of the snow. Like, you can't get a brighter colour than red to stand out against snow. But no. Absolute nonsense. So there's a link to this. There's not much more to it. There's a link to this. I've also put a link to this one as well in the description box. This has a little bit more detail, but I'm not going to read this. It's much of it's the same as what we've already talked about. But I've put those three. So the New York Post, and then the one we've just read, and then this one that's on the screen in the description box if you want to have a read. But what I want to play you is a few minutes of the hearing from last week. So, God, this is so funny, because this to me explains perfectly why a fight broke out. I don't think they intended to kill him. I don't. I think he potentially was lured there a little bit, but I think a fight broke out, an argument broke out, and it got way more heated, and John ended up getting bitten by the dog, getting punched. He maybe fell. He may have been trying to leave and fell down the basement steps. We don't know, and we'll never know probably, unless the Alberts confess, and I don't think they are going to confess, are they? But I think whatever happened in the basement, which is why they redid the floor. And maybe the majority of the people at the party had no idea what had gone on. It doesn't have to be a conspiracy of everybody at the party. It can literally just be the people in the basement. And then, you know, they come back upstairs. John's down there, you know, dying. And they think, oh, we'll just leave him there. And he's close to death. They get rid of all these party goers because this party that kind of started at like 12:30, all the party goers left. They all left like within an hour. They all left. Why did they all leave? Brian Albert was tired, apparently. Allegedly, Brian Albert was tired, so everybody went. And everybody that left had to leave via the front where their cars were, and nobody saw John O'Keefe's body on the lawn. I'll show you again. I mean, it's a few yards. You know, if people either left from this door or they think there's a side door, maybe. But, you know, some people would have parked there. Some people maybe were parked there. Nobody saw a dead body there. It's not a huge yard, is it? It's not huge. It's not a massive yard, is it? It's not like, you know, it's a couple of acres that you've got to like walk through to get back to the road. No, it's a small yard. And nobody saw a dead body. Nobody saw a dead body. I can't. Honestly, I can't. Anyway, this is the motive, in my opinion. Sound isn't brilliant, but I will turn it up. All right, listen to this.
Your Honor, I could go through with the court the specific evidence we have with regard to motive, opportunity, and means with regard to the 3 Commonwealth witnesses that I've named.
So go ahead.
Happy to do it. Starting with Brian Higgins. He was present at 34 Fairview Road on January 28th to 29th. He was close friends with the homeowner, Brian Albert. He had a prior romantic interest in Karen Read. He did not expect Karen and John O'Keefe to be at the Waterfall, that bar, on January 28th. Karen Read did not greet Higgins, despite the fact that they had previously exchanged flirtatious texts and that she had been at his apartment one evening, although there was nothing that took place between them any more than a peck of a kiss. At the Waterfall, Higgins does not engage with John O'Keefe. He does not say goodbye to John O'Keefe and Karen when he leaves, but before he leaves, he texts Karen, and that text was something to the effect of, well, with a lot of M's. We know that there was a preservation order from this court, your predecessor, Judge Krupp, to preserve his cell phone, and that Trooper Proctor gave him an edict, an order to serve on Brian Higgins, and he left it at the front desk of the Canton police station for him, and that Higgins, we learned through the federal investigation, Higgins became angry, demanded that Proctor come back, and he essentially upbraided him and read him the riot act, which shows a little bit about Higgins' personality. At the end of the night, everyone discussed going back to 34 Fairview, and when he gets back to 34 Fairview, he texts not Karen, he texts John O'Keefe at 12:20 a.m. He testified before the federal grand jury that he had no knowledge that they had been invited to 34 Fairview, but that is contradicted by this text message. And the inference is that he was coaxing John to come to that house. And, you know, we're not saying this gives him a motive to kill John, but we don't have to show that. Any motive to feel hostility or animosity towards John O'Keefe goes to his motive. And Your Honor, when Brian Higgins and Brian Albert are in that house, they're the only 2 people who are unaccounted for when the rest of the group was in the kitchen. And they claimed that they were looking at photographs together. And we have evidence that they were in the basement. We believe that Brian Albert made a mistake before the state grand jury by testifying they went upstairs to look at photos. Brian Higgins says unequivocally that the only place the 2 went was into the living room to look at photos and military ribbons, whatever they were looking at. Brian Higgins did not know that Brian Albert had said they went upstairs. And he also testified he had never been upstairs at Brian Albert's house in his life. That means that if Brian Albert said they went upstairs, They're coming up from the basement.
Bingo. Bingo. There you go. There's the motive. Not to kill him, but for a fight to break out. So it's my opinion that the night went down like this. Brian Higgins had designs, shall we say, on Karen Read. And Karen Read had been to Brian Higgins's house and they'd shared a kiss. No, maybe they'd shared more than a kiss. Maybe, right? Maybe Brian wanted there to be more than a kiss. But we'll let that one go. But Brian had designs on Karen. He then is out there drinking, had some beers, you know, Dutch courage and all that. And who walks in but Karen and John? Brian gets jealous. Brian Higgins, so these guys are both called Brian. So Brian Higgins might have been bad-mouthing John to Brian Albert, you know, still in the bar. And Brian Albert was, yeah, he's a bastard. Yeah, my nephew's had loads of problems with him. So they start yakking, you know, both complaining about John. So they hitch a plan. Let's get him back to the house. Let's get him back to the house and, you know, teach him a lesson. Because Brian Higgins is jealous and Brian Albert just doesn't like him. All right. So they don't ask. They get Jennifer. So Jennifer McCabe is Brian Albert's sister-in-law. They get Jennifer to ask Karen, do you want to come back to the house? Now, Karen and John don't really know these people all that well, but they agree. But when they get there, right, Karen and John aren't really getting on, and there's been a little bit of problems in their relationship. And John had shouted at Karen earlier because she'd taken his daughter to Dunkin' Donuts, and he was in a flap about that. He didn't want his daughter to be spoiled because John had two. No, they're not daughter. He adopted them. All right, they're actually his niece and nephew. But their parents died years before, so John adopted his niece and nephew. So essentially, they were his adopted kids. Yeah, so John's daughter stroke niece, Karen, really loved these kids, and she would, you know, take the niece out, you know, shopping, take her out, and this particular time taking her to Dunkin' Donuts, and John didn't like it. John didn't want them to be spoiled, and he thought Karen was spoiling them, so he didn't want that. Anyhow, so words have been exchanged. So Karen said, I'm not coming in. You know, I'll drop you off. I'm not coming in. So John went into the party. Before they'd left the bar, it was Brian Higgins who had texted John, you know, you're going to come back, aren't you, John, blah, blah, blah. Just to, you know, make sure that he'd arrive there, you know, for this dressing down, so to speak. And he went and he texted Karen with, well. I don't know what that means, well, to someone that he's got a romantic design on. Maybe it was, well, why are you with him? Or, well, I thought we were on, or whatever, right? So Karen drops John off, doesn't run him over or knock him backwards or whatever when she's doing a 3-point turn. But John goes in and they take John down to the basement. You know, they're going to have words with him. They're going to read him the riot act. They're not going to kill him. They're just going to, you know, teach him a lesson. So they maybe tell the other party goers that they're going to go and, I don't know, look at something down in the basement. So they all go down in the basement. A fight ensues. John's cornered by Brian Albert and Brian Higgins. And Chloe, the dog, hears this fight, comes running along to defend her pack, to defend her people. Who's the stranger there? It's John. So she also attacks. So John is now 3 against 1. So maybe he tries to flee, and maybe they pull him back down the steps, and maybe they get him on the floor and they just start kicking him. So they don't mean to kill him. It just got out of hand. And those are the only 2 people who whose movements are unexplained at this party. Like these other party goers, you know, they can't account for Brian and Brian's movements the whole night. And shortly after, you know, very soon after this party got started, they were all asked to leave because Brian was tired. Well, Brian maybe was tired because a 60-year-old, you know, he might be a Gulf War veteran and thank you for your service and all that, but you're an absolute rotter. Fugitive commander, whatever, you're still an absolute rotter. 60-year-old man decides to get the better of this younger man who's, you know, had arguments with his nephew in the past and who his friend Brian Higgins really doesn't like because he's jealous, basically. So they leave him there, bleeding into the basement floor. So they know they've got to remove that eventually. And when everybody's gone, maybe they're panicking and thinking, what should we do? What should we do with his body? We know he's dying or he's dead by then. What should we do? What should we do? What should we do? And one of them remembers seeing the snowplow go by. So they think, I know what, we'll put him out in the yard near the road and we can just pretend we don't know what on earth's going on. And when his body's found, well, it's just the snowplow hit him by accident. And I think once they realised that Karen was absolutely distraught, she was potentially making incriminating statements, even though she'd done nothing wrong. And then when Michael Proctor saw that her taillight was broken, then they hitched a plan between them to frame Karen. There you go. That's what I think happened. Did it go down like that? Not necessarily exactly like that, but something like that. That's my theory of the case anyway. So we got to wait to see now when this shindig will start. Let me go on to Twitter and see how many jurors they've managed to recruit so far. Oh, Karen Read's trending. Karen Read's top trend. I should have shared this stream, but I didn't. I'll share it now. Oh, I'm not even logged into Michelle Walks. All right, let's have a look. Let's have a look. Have we got any reporters here telling us about the jury selection? Here's a special towel press conference with accused murderer Karen Read before jury selection continues. Oh. Who's this guy? Grant Smith Ellis. I asked Karen if she's not taking the stand because she said John's death was all her fault at the scene. I also asked if her dad, a former Bentley U. Dean, is a member of the intelligence community, which would explain Read's direct communication to acting U.S. Attorney Josh Levy, who may have started a pretextual probe at Karen Read's request into Read's own murder investigation. In response, I told also on blah, blah, blah. So this was Karen turning up today.
Oh, you gotta be careful. Sorry, Gretchen.
Any comment before jury selection today?
Not this morning. Any comment, Karen? Karen, are you worried you're going to be banned from presenting a third-party defense? You have no evidence of it.
Oh, what's up, man? What's up? Spilling some bull again? Are you? Huh? You spilling your bowl again? Huh? Are you ticklish? Are you ticklish?
You cannot touch people.
What?
That is actually an assault. You created this freak show.
Doing a great job, Eliza.
This is insane.
Karen, is your dad in the intelligence community? Hey, I got friends too. Alan Jackson, who's Leah Ferreira?
That is absolutely insane. That's nuts. Why don't they allow them to park nearer to the courthouse? What if someone attacked her? That's crazy. That's mental, that. Happiest murder defendant in history. Well, I'd laugh. I'd laugh at that. Is your dad in the intelligence agency? Well, he might be. He might be a spy. Oh, dear. Per sources, the fans of accused murderer Karen Read have violated the court's existing order and leaked the confidential jury questionnaire that is being given to potential jurors at the start of each day. Oh, dear me. Well, it's the same guy, so I don't know if it's true or not. There's not much news. There's not much coming out. I mean, this is 2 hours ago. Out of the 84 people in jury pool 2, 3 say they've had contact with witnesses, 58 have heard about the case, and 24 have formed an opinion. 37 of them say serving on the trial would be substantial hardship. So out of 84, so 58. If you've heard about the case, that doesn't necessarily preclude you from being a juror. But I guess the judge would prefer them not to have heard about the case. But that's like all of them. that's nearly all of them. No way. Absolutely. When you go to watch this trial, remember, facts matter. This could have happened to you. Exactly. Anyway, strange there's not a lot coming out. The bailiff is playing musical chairs. Here's how it works. The jurors are all sitting in the pews. 3 jurors' names get called out and are seated at a special bench that seats 3 people. One by one, the judge calls out their number. The first juror on this special bench goes to the sidebar. The lawyers and the prosecutors and the judges discuss the answers to the questionnaire by the juror and ask them any additional questions they may have. The juror then sits down in a special chair by the bailiff on the other side of the courtroom. The judge then discusses whether that juror will be appropriate for this case with the prosecutors and the lawyers. This could be a very long process. The judge then states out loud if the juror is excused or will be seated on the jury. Repeat cycle. So far, 100% excusal rate. But we've only gone through about 5% of the jurors. This is boring. I'm going to get some lunch. Well, maybe that's why there's not many reporters commenting, because it's boring. They've probably all left. That's a very hard way to select jurors. I'm sure there's a quicker way or a more effective way than that. I'm pretty sure about it. Anyhow. I'm going to share this to Twitter. Let's talk about dog bites. Let's see if this gets any views. Karen Read. Did I spell that right? Karen Read. Cool. All right. So what's it on now? I'm just gonna like look at it in like 2 hours and see whether it's got any more views. 2.6K in 5 months. All right. Let's come back in 2 hours and see how many more it gets. The dog bites. The dog bites thing. These are dog bites, though, guys. Is there anybody who doesn't agree that they're dog bites? Can anybody see any other thing in that than dog bites? No, it's not reed, as in the plants that grow by the side of rivers that Peter Falding doesn't like. It's read as in read a book. I have spelt it right. Barbed wire fence. No barbed wire fences though on 34 Fairview Road. And on the outside, you wouldn't get barbed wire fence marks on the outside of your arm. You'd get them on the inside. Like if you're climbing over a fence, the scratches would be on the inside. Unless a car has teeth. Those are dog bites. Exactly. Unless a car has teeth. Those are dog bites. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. I think it's going to be maybe next week by the time the trial gets going proper. So Wednesday now. So if we've only got 4 jurors seated by now, then yeah, it's going to be a while. So I'm very much looking forward to this trial. Apart from the Delphi, which will be disappointing because we won't get hardly any news coming out. We'll all be sitting there refreshing Twitter every 2 minutes. This is the trial this year that I've been most looking forward to. So once this trial gets going, I'll be absolutely glued to it. You won't be able to drag me away from it. You really won't. And apparently, it's going to go on like 6 to 7 weeks. There's a huge witness list for both the prosecution and the defense. So for those who didn't know anything about the case, that's the case in a nutshell. There's loads more I could have said, but I think I've gone through kind of the main points. But yeah, I'm dying to see the evidence. I really am dying to see the evidence. But I'm going to go now. So thank you all. Thank you all for joining. Thanks as always to the mods. Thank you. I think I needed one donation, but it was a huge one from Purple AJ. If I had other donations that I've missed, I'm really, really sorry. I don't think I did. Yeah, so enjoy the rest of your day. Go and check out the Sebastian Rogers video that I did this morning over on Michelle After Dark. And go and check out the funny short video that I did on this channel as well. Oh, absolute classic comment of the day by somebody who believed that Chris and Katie Proudfoot have got cloaks of invisibility. Seriously, go and check it out. All right, guys, I'll see you soon. Bye for now.